Good morning, everybody. Welcome into Denver Sports Coffee Break presented by Superbook Sports.
Hey.
We've got the D-Mac in here in the studio.
What's
He's
going
sounding
on?
a little bit better, everybody.
A little better.
You got the tea, you got the coffee break mug.
That's right.
Everything's good.
That's right. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. The thing that's not fun, though, Gabriel Landeskog news that's coming out this morning.
So disappointing.
This is almost like devastating news.
Yeah, it's from what I'm reading, I'm not a knee expert, although I have had my meniscus and ACL done. It's like a 12 to 18 month recovery. So he'll miss the entire next year. And the question is, will he be good enough to come back at age, I guess, 32?
Yeah.
By the time the next season rolls around to keep playing. And 32 is not obviously old, but it's just a lot of.
But as an athlete, it is a little old.
Well, especially with these hockey guys Gabe's been basically a professional player since he's been 16 years old. Mm-hmm. He came over from Sweden to play juniors in, live with a family and play basically professionally when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
So he's been going hard his whole life. But that being said, it was a freak accident that caused this that he's had to try to recover from, and he just hasn't been able to do it. This has got to be a last-ditch effort. It's got to be something that they didn't want to do at all and had no other choice, because I'm sure it was considered at some point. Mm-hmm. It was just the hope that he would be able to come back. Likely they thought, well, let's do some other stuff so he could come back in next season rather than miss an entire season. I mean, hindsight's 20/20 on it, but I feel so awful for Gabe. Mm-hmm. There'll be a press conference here, which will be very interesting, during coffee break, where Chris McFarland will speak as well as Gabe Landeskog. So not only will we hear theoretically details about Landeskog, we should, during coffee break, be hearing details about Val Nichushkin.
Yeah, true. And Will Peterson's going to be on that for us and let us know if there's anything that we need to know. It's just, D-Mac, it's not. I don't want to be the person to say it, but it just feels like the more and more we hear about Gabriel Landeskog, the less and less confident I am that he's going to return.
Oh, me too. Listen, you don't want to wish ill on. We're not
Never.
wishing ill. We're wishing the best. But I'll be surprised if he. I won't be surprised if he makes it back for a time period into the NHL. But what will surprise me is if he's at his same effectiveness as he was before. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, do I hope I'm wrong about that. Yep. And I hope he comes back. He has 6 years left on his contract, Rachel. Yeah. So he's got plenty of time left. It is interesting how they've structured things. $7 million, which they owe him, will not count against them. So they can go and use that $7 million as if he wasn't on the team for next season.
Well, that's great, because obviously you have to kind of look at the free agents and who's going to be out there, because not having Gabriel Landeskog out there, I mean, we talked about it. They needed him to win the Stanley Cup, and if they're going to have any chance next year of advancing further in the playoffs, they're going to need a big body like Gabe.
Well, the big name that's out there could be a reunion of Ryan O'Reilly.
Everyone is excited about Ryan O'Reilly.
I mean, he would, have veteran presence. He'd be a second-line guy for them, and he's, it would seem to make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The Leafs are the Leafs. They're about to expire. So, I mean, he would theoretically, I think it would be very tempting to have Ryan O'Reilly come back. Mm-hmm. And then, you have to go through the landscape of everything else. And another huge question to answer is Nichushkin. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, who's your second line center? We don't know. Probably not JT Compher again. I don't know, maybe, but maybe not. Landeskog, well, he's gone.
Yep.
Nichushkin, we have no idea. So you're missing your entire second line. And then you'd theoretically have Lehkonen, McKinnon, and Rantanen on your top line, and you kind of fill in the blanks from there. So you have your top line relatively stable. You have nobody on your second line, and a lot of questions on the rest of the team, aside from goaltending, which you're fine with goaltending. You're good there. Well, you're at least contractually, you're good there.
Okay.
Contractually, you're good there.
That's a little different.
Well, I mean, are you not a Georgie fan? Are you, no?
I had bigger hopes for him, and I know it felt like all odds were against Georgiev, but I mean, look at how the playoffs went. I couldn't exactly have been
all. You put that on him?
All hi-ho.
Or do you think he just didn't quite do enough?
I just think he didn't quite do enough. And like I said, there were a ton of other issues on the ice, so I can't put full blame. And I'm like, okay, well, if Darcy would have been in there, would things have looked any different?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
I just had higher hopes because the expectation coming into the beginning of the season was, oh, he's much better than Darcy Kemper.
The most frustrating thing right now is the Avs were the better team in Game 7, and they still lost. They lost because they got a bad break because a goal got past Georgiev when it went off Ben Meyer's fist, his glove. So that's a bad break. And then they couldn't score another goal, which was just like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So the depth that they have, and it just wasn't enough, but they were better than the Kraken. But I got to give the Kraken credit. They're up on Dallas right now. They just blew the doors off Dallas the other night. So they're obviously a really, really good team, and it's just frustrating. That being said, where were the Avs actually going? You know, where were they going, period?
Yep. And that's the exact same conversation we had last year with the Nuggets going up against the Warriors. We were like, well, if you're not going to win it all, if you're not going to advance and be super hot, then just get out in the first round. Now that the heartbreak is over, the funeral's over for the Avalanche, I'm like, you're right. That was it. Everybody get healthy. It didn't matter. Moving on to the second round, what was that going to do? They weren't going to advance further.
I actually feel the same. If they're not going to win a championship, and I just don't think they really were this year.
Nope.
You know, today is the anniversary of Game 4 against Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
So think about how much stuff happened after this point last year for the Avalanche. I mean, all of it pretty amazing and awesome, and we were so happy to witness and be there for it. But just think about how much stuff, how much time, how much of a grind, how Landeskog was able to sort of hang in there and come back. I can't even believe he played at all last year based on what's going on. So I do like the fact that this team that's just been kind of beat up has a lot of time to rest and reorganize. I think that will be good for them next year.
I'm reading the comments. Somebody says Crosby. Get him.
I mean, okay. I mean, you know, sure. You know, you could probably get a couple of vets. You know, a lot of these guys in hockey, Rachel, there's reasons why there's guys that get paid millions like Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic.
True.
It's easy for us just to pick off the big names. Now, I mentioned a big name in Ryan O'Reilly. Crosby's another huge name that's out there. And I don't know all the ins and outs of what it would take to get him and where he's at. But I mean, on the surface, getting Sidney Crosby sounds fantastic to me. But I really just don't know where he's at contractually, what you'd have to give up for him. I just don't know. And I'm just nervous, a pinch, about putting together superstar all-star teams for the longer haul. But listen, maybe it is a one-year deal. Maybe you do say, listen, Gabe's going to be okay. He is going to be back. Nichushkin is going to...
Do you actually think they'll answer any questions about that? Because I think they're going to say it's a personal matter. We can't speak on it.
They certainly could. It would be the first time that the general manager of the Avalanche has been questioned about a personnel decision like Nichushkin. It would be the first time.
Yep.
So I think he could, but you got to ask the question anyway. And I think the Avalanche should have addressed this much earlier on with somebody else besides Jared Bednar. So today's an interesting day out of nowhere. You know, we didn't expect any of this, and all of a sudden we've got quite an interesting day.
That's true. Last night was very interesting for the Chicago Blackhawks, and you might be like, Rachel, why are you bringing this up?
Why are you bringing this up?
Well, okay, I just saw this. Blackhawks sell $2.5 million worth of season tickets after winning the draft lottery last night.
Well, there's a stud coming out. There's an absolute Connor Bedard, I think his name is, and he is just like the cat's pajamas.
He's supposed to be everything.
Yeah, he's got some crazy highlights. He looks absolutely spectacular. So that's good for the Blackhawks.
Yep.
They have Justin Fields and now Bedard. Good for them.
You really think the Broncos would be a better team with Justin Fields?
They'd be in the playoffs last year
my gosh.
with Justin
Okay.
Fields.
We'll stick on this, but what does this mean for the Colorado Avalanche now that the Blackhawks, everyone was like, the Blackhawks can't be bad for just like a couple years because they always seem to get the luck drawn on their side and are able to find ways to essentially just be a good dominant team. And of course they bring in this guy.
If they do what the Avalanche do, they get the, it took time to develop for the Avalanche. I mean, they did have, some really good, they had Gabriel Landeskog during their worst season ever.
Yep.
But when you have the fundamental bricks to build off of. And for the Avs, it was Landeskog, McKinnon, Makar.
Yep.
And then Rantanen, and you kind of go from there. So if you can have a core,
Yep.
you can always, do well. So what's the rest of the core? But within the core, you have to have some sort of superstar. And so the Avalanche were lucky enough to get, two pure superstars in Makar and McKinnon, and a top 10 player at least in Rantanen. So, you're doing all right. Landeskog was not really that guy. He's one of the top players for sure, but he's not like a top 10, maybe not even a top 20 guy.
I wouldn't put him in the top 20 either. Top 30, I would say.
But he was just that. First of all, he's the captain. He's the best leader you can. He's a very, very, very high quality top 6 player.
Yes.
Very high quality. And he's the guy who can fight if you really need somebody to mix it up for you. That makes sense over McKinnon or Makar or Rantanen, one of these guys. So, Gabe was just kind of like it. He was just like everything that you need.
Yep.
So to replace Gabriel Landeskog,
it breaks my heart, D-Mac.
it brings up some weird, wacky questions like, do you name a captain in the interim? Usually in most sports, the captain is not a big deal. I don't think the Nuggets have a captain. I couldn't tell you who the captain is of the Rockies if they have one. Football, they give it to there's like nine captains. There's different captains a game. It's only in hockey where it really, really seems to matter.
Yep.
So that would be interesting next year if they make a move like that. I'm sure. We'll see if that gets asked today too.
Mel says, this just sucks so much. Clint says, fewer than 10 minutes in a discussion about hockey, and DMAC gets Justin Field into the show.
Well, we mentioned Chicago. So I got that in, as we mentioned Chicago.
It is just heartbreaking, though. And, of course, we're going to keep everybody updated. Like we said, in roughly 15 minutes, we're going to be hearing from Chris McFarland and Gabriel Landeskog. Will Peterson's going to be on that for us, letting us know anything. But let's talk about K-Jack, because he's also going to be returning to the Denver Broncos. And there was a lot of questions about, all right, when is he coming? Is he going to re-sign? And he does. 4th year now that he's re-signed.
Good for him. It tells me that the hip surgery with Caden Stearns was probably progressing perhaps slower than they expected. So you get some depth, you get some leadership with K-Jack. I like it. It's a low-cost deal.
Yep.
It's bargain basement shopping at this point. Nobody else was offering him a better deal. I know he lives here. I know he likes it here. So I think it's a pretty solid deal. I'm a little concerned about Caden Stearns. I'm not exactly sure what that says about his recovery from his hip issues. Hopefully he's okay. So we'll see. We'll see, but good to have K-Jack back. I like it.
I think the defense was obviously the strong point of last year, and so you don't have to make, hopefully, too many changes. There are other positions that I feel like are in more dire need of getting some improvements, where you know that they all know how to work together back in the secondary. So I'm like, all right, let's just keep that chemistry rolling.
The Broncos have done a really great job filling holes. They have a depth issue that is impossible to address without a draft. So you're on thin ice that guys will more or less stay healthy. At least you got to hope it's a healthier year than last year, which was just abysmal in terms of injury. It was just awful. So you got to hope that they just stay healthier than last year, and because the depth range is not great. It's not. And this is where the Broncos could get themselves in a sticky wicket. But on the surface, the team looks really good. And on the surface, I love what they've done in free agency. The draft picks make perfect sense to me. And I'm encouraged on the surface of things.
What I am surprised about when I saw that they re-signed K-Jack, so they're saving $1.3 million in cap space.
Okay.
Every single comment that I saw about this was sign Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt. Okay.
Sign Kareem Hunt. That was it.
Okay.
D-Mac, I'm not kidding. 99% of the comments that I saw about that were sign Kareem Hunt with that money. Do the Broncos still need a running back, or should they just focus on, building up the younger guys?
To me, you could get an undrafted guy. You could pick up somebody during the season. You could pick up Kareem Hunt on a bargain basement deal. You're hoping Javonte Williams comes back, right?
Exactly.
And you've got some J.P. Ryan. So, you could use some depth. You probably want to have 4 running backs, 3 on the roster, 1 that you barely use, 1 on practice squad. So if Kareem Hunt is one of those guys, I got no problems with that. Anybody at this point, Rach, is going to be some sort of 1 year, you could cut him at any point sort of deal. You're really not very invested into anybody at this point. So you like Kareem Hunt, go grab Kareem Hunt. I don't really care. But it's not like we were banging the table for Latavius Murray last year at this time, and he turned out to be really good for them.
Yep.
So you got to be a little bit patient here. There's all sorts of things that can happen.
Remind me, where did Latavius go?
He went to Buffalo.
Okay,
He went to
he
the
did end
Bills.
up signing.
But he was just photographed with Russell Wilson. They had some very dramatic black and white photos on social media. It must have been some sort of charity event, and Russ labeled it Goodfellas, black and white. And Garrett Bowles was there, Latavius was there, and Gabe Davis, I think, was there. So some sort of event. They look good. They all look cool.
They look lean.
He looked good. He looked good in the suit. He looked lean. I'm not anti-Russ. There's some of his stuff which I could do without, but whatever. At this point, picking on Russ seems, even to me, seems kind of petty and stupid. Like, what are we doing here? Listen, we're all rooting for him to succeed. Everything's been set up for him to succeed. There's no more excuses. You've got to make a gargantuan decision at the end of next year, kind of around this time in May, about his contract. And I wish for the best. I mean, they're certainly in a position where starting over with another quarterback would be extremely difficult. And I don't think Sean Payton's going to be here for longer than maybe 3 or 4 years anyways.
Really?
Yeah, why would he? I mean, Sean Payton is what, 58, 59 or something?
You don't think he's going to be a Belichick and just...
No, I think he's got a lot of other things that he's got going on. I think he got bored for the year that he was off. I think he wants to win. I think he wants to win now. I think everything indicates that. And after pocketing around $60 million or so, him and Skylene will probably go off to, some other places, the next adventure. But I don't care about any of that. I don't need a 10-year commitment from Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton signed up exactly for the Russell Wilson experience and make Russ cook, work, let's go.
Everyone talks about Sean Payton is 100% willing to hop off the Russell Wilson bandwagon or whatever we want to call it and move on to a different quarterback if it doesn't work. If he is unable to, quote unquote, fix Russ, because I know a lot of people don't like that, does that impact his image at all as a coach?
No. I mean, nobody's going to blame anything that goes wrong this year on Sean Payton. I mean, nothing.
But isn't he supposed to be this like magical head coach that can come in and, rework all these quarterbacks?
I don't know about rework the quarterbacks, but rework a team for sure.
Okay.
And don't forget that he had the most success with a quarterback who turned out to be much better than anybody thought they were going to be in a, undersized for quarterbacks, Drew Brees. It turns out you actually had a Hall of Famer on your hands, but Russ is a Hall of Famer, isn't he? No? Russ isn't a Hall of Famer?
I would have said yes before last year.
Really? You might be right.
It's a great I'm actually curious what people in the comments would say. Is Russell Wilson a Hall of Famer? Because I don't know. You want to say yes after obviously what he did in Seattle. He was fantastic. That's why we were all so excited. But if you have a couple of bad years and your season ends or your career just ends being a bottom tier quarterback, can you be a Hall of Famer?
It's funny. I think he still is a Hall of Famer right now. And I think everybody's writing off last year because of Nathaniel Hack and how terrible the coaches were. I think you're onto something, though. I think he's fine right now, but he could, if he has another bad year, when everything was set up for him, he's healthy, he's lost weight, he's in better shape, you got the right coach, you got a much improved offensive line, I mean, the only thing that might hurt them just a pinch is if Randy Gregory was really a miss. If they don't get any kind of production out of a pass rushing outside linebacker like Gregory, that they sunk a lot of money in, or they don't get production from Browning and Gregory or any combination of those folks together, all right, fine. But I think you're going to be okay there. So I think everything does hinge on Russ. And I guess we'll see. If he goes for, gosh, what am I thinking? The bottom line is actually wins more than anything. But if he has something like 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, throws for 3,200 yards, they get 10 wins, I think everybody's pretty happy with that.
I would agree. And then I would say he's on the trajectory to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm saying, and I could read everybody's comments, says 1 year disqualifies him from the Hall of Fame. Of course he is. He had one bad year. Give it a rest.
Yeah.
We're
that's what we
fixing to
just
find
said.
out. 100%. Right now, I would say yes. But if his seasons continue going what we saw last year, I don't think so, because people are going to look at more of the bad years, I think less than of the good years, because it was the more current seasons.
Yeah, I mean, if he stinks this year, I mean, it's going to be bad news for him.
Exactly.
If it stinks for him, I mean, if it stinks, God, how could it stink, though? I mean, how could it just flat out stink? Even I have a hard time seeing that.
I don't
You know, I think you're just going to find a much more power football, running the ball, more conservative offensive approach. I think they'll just get him out of the pocket. They'll take away a lot of situations that put him in bad situations, holding him in the pocket too long, making a million different reads. They'll give him less reads. They'll make it simple. They'll make the throws easier for him. I think it'll be productive for him. I don't think he's going to be some sort of superstar. I don't think he's going to be somebody who's better than the vast majority of quarterbacks in the AFC, who are younger and taller and just better. I mean, look at the AFC quarterbacks. I mean, it's kind of sick. So I don't expect it to be that. But can you win in a different way? Yeah, you can. You can. I don't think you'd win a Super Bowl. I don't think you'll ever win a Super Bowl with Russell Wilson. And the problem is there's a difference between him succeeding and being better and him being a championship quarterback on the same level as Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or probably Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I mean, the AFC just has not really changed all that much, Rach.
No.
I mean, it's crazy. The Avengers in the AFC with quarterbacks are just, I mean, it's staggering.
Good Morning Football actually had done a tier of footballs. Kyle Brandt did it, and Pat Surtain was on yesterday with Good Morning Football at the
Pat
breakfast
Surtain,
table. I know.
future wide receiver. Go ahead, yes, what he said.
What a man. And they had Russell Wilson, so they had tiered it out. Patrick Mahomes, tier 1. Russell Wilson, tier 4. And he had actually agreed that
How many
everybody...
tiers are there?
I think there was 7.
7, so he's on tier 4. All right.
It was like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow in tier 2, and then Aaron Rodgers. I'm trying to remember who else was in tier 3.
Were they just doing the AFC?
Yeah.
Well, I would assume Lamar Jackson's in there.
I believe he was tier 3, and there was
Herbert's
one
gotta be
other
in
one.
there. Justin Herbert?
Well, he might have been tier 4. I don't remember.
Justin Herbert was tier 4?
He might have been.
Wow.
I'd have to go
All
back
right.
and look. But one way or another, he had Russell Wilson as tier 4, and they asked him, hey, would you move any of these quarterbacks around? And the only one he did was he moved Trevor Lawrence up, who I believe was tier 5 or tier 6, and he moved that up to tier 4. So
Okay.
Trevor Lawrence and Russell Wilson, same tier.
Really?
Love it or hate it.
That's seems preposterous to me. But I mean, you know, okay, Andrew Brand. I mean, it's your survey. You can do whatever you want.
Well, that's what Pat Surtain moved him up.
Oh, Pat Surtain moved up Trevor Lawrence?
Yes.
Oh, all right. I got you. I'm sorry. I was confused there. All right. Well, that's smart by Pat Surtain. I mean, you know, certainly Trevor Lawrence to me, I don't know what they're how many quarterbacks were in tier 1? 1? Was it just Patrick Mahomes?
It was just Patrick Mahomes.
All right. Listen, if you're just talking about the top 7 quarterbacks in the AFC, Trevor Lawrence is in there. So is Herbert. So is Mahomes. So is Allen. So is Lamar Jackson. And, you know, this is tricky because how many teams get to the playoffs?
Yeah.
7. So, I mean, you know, is Russell Wilson one of the top 7 quarterbacks in the AFC?
We're fixing to find out, like the comments said.
Is Russell Wilson a better option than Aaron Rodgers next year? Not for the next few years, next year. And we still go back to the deal that was done for Russell Wilson as being the biggest issue. And it was interesting this week to read that the Packers wanted a Russell Wilson deal for Aaron Rodgers, and the Jets just laughed at him. And that's what took the deal so long. And finally, you know, they had to settle with probably a first-round pick next year if Rodgers plays 65% of the time. Well, that is way different than what was given up for Wilson. See, that's the problem. It's not Wilson, in order to equate his value, can't just be good. He's got to be spectacular.
Yeah.
And listen, it's not his fault that the Broncos were so dumb in the deal they gave for him. So he can only do the best he can. It's not his fault that the Broncos got fleeced in the deal. It's got nothing to do with Russell Wilson. Good for him. And it's not Russell Wilson's fault that he negotiated a great contract with his agent Mark Rodgers. I mean, none of these are Russell Wilson's fault. So I can't really blame him for it.
If I was him, I would have done the exact same thing.
Who wouldn't have?
Exactly.
Who would not have?
Okay, well, you had talked a little bit about it, and we're going to bring this back to the Kareem Hunt conversation, is Sean Payton is one of those guys who comes in and he's just willing to do whatever it takes to win. So why not bring in a star running back like Kareem Hunt?
Sure. I mean, is he still a star running back? I mean, right now? I mean, these running backs.
I'd put him above Javonte Williams and...
Oh, I would not. I definitely would not do that
Really?
right now. Well, but
you have to think
how
about
is
the
he
injury.
how is he going to be? Well, how's everybody's injury? How's you know?
Healthy Javonte Williams, I would agree with you. I know.
All right, fair. I don't know.
Destroyed me.
I think they're expecting more out of Samaje Perine to step up and be that.
I'm actually really excited to see what he's going to do.
Listen, if you want Kareem Hunt, go get Kareem Hunt.
I don't, but I was just literally, I was
Do you
so
care any
mind
about his
blown.
past at all? Do you care about any of that stuff?
I don't love it. Obviously,
I don't love it either.
It's not a good look. It's kind of the same thing with Nichushkin. Different situations, but I am very much you have mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes in your life, and so you can't base somebody entirely off of that mistake. So
I think that's a fair assessment. I don't love it. I don't love it either.
I don't. But am I gonna be like, oh, he's the worst human on planet Earth? No.
It's always the most difficult thing in sports to how much do we need this? What is forgiveness worth? And you know, should you and where things are. To me, in all honesty, to me, I guess I'm not that big of a fan of it. I just don't see that big of an upside to it. I think there's younger versions of guys that you could easily find, or perhaps middle of the season, older versions that will be around like Latavius Murray. So I think the Broncos would have a choice. And if you have a choice, I would just make a different choice for a bunch of different reasons. I mean, I was so down on the Broncos when they brought Pac-Man Jones in here years ago. I mean, I thought that was a absolutely absurd move, and it turned out to be an absurd move.
Yep.
And so, listen, I don't know what listeners or who's really that excited about Kareem Hunt.
That's why I'm having this conversation. I could not believe the amount of comments that were like, use that 1.3 to go get Kareem Hunt. I was shocked, and that's why I'm like, am I missing something? Is everybody in Broncos country want Kareem Hunt?
Everybody's just, you know, you get caught up in names, and the truth is with running backs, they just wear through their careers just so quickly, Rachel.
Yeah.
But the good news is they're very effective at a very young age too. They don't need the same time to develop. Like defensive linemen seem to take forever to develop, or at least a longer period of time.
Agreed.
Running backs are like that. So are wide receivers, and for the most part, so are cornerbacks. So a lot of guys, quarterbacks, of course, quarterbacks are the biggest mystery. You never know. Tackles take a little bit of time. But these impact athletes, they're incredible. I mean, they are just, the athletes in the NFL today are so much better than they've ever been because of what they're going through, which is a minor league football system in college football.
Yeah.
So they're better prepared, better athletes, better in shape, more impactful right away. So I just get like icky about any older running back, period, no matter who it is.
Well, we'll have to see what the Broncos decide to do if they even bring in another running back. The Chris McFarland, Gabriel Landeskog press conference is about to begin. Of course, if there's any major news, Will Peterson is going to keep us updated. But Jokic doesn't get suspended. Hallelujah. But he does, however, get a $25,000
For what?
fine.
What for?
For touching a fan?
Touching a fan. So the fan touches you first.
That's where I'm confused. Does any of the fans get in trouble at all? I know one got kicked out, but there was a lot of people in that little.
No, apparently, if you're the owner of a team or NBA legend like Isaiah Thomas, you can put your hands all over an NBA star. I guess that's okay. Listen, this situation is preposterous. Jokic should not have been fined at all. The technical should have been rescinded. All of the blame is on Matt Ishbia. I'm glad he could, from up high, up on his clouded mountaintop, bestow his forgiveness on Jokic to not get suspended. I mean, the whole thing is preposterous.
Well, I went back and looked at his tweet too, and he was like, I hope nobody gets fined or suspended. And I was like, well, clearly the NBA didn't care what you had to say because he still got a $25,000 fine. Which I will say.
What's the fine for? What is it for?
And I saw your tweet being like, well, then you need to have ball kids essentially
Yes.
that are able to go and get the ball and deliver it back to the ref.
So the only sport where you need the ball back is basketball. All the other sports, they will just put another ball into play. Every other sport, think about it.
That's true. And soccer, they have different balls that line the
They have ball
sidelines.
boys on the sidelines.
Fair.
In field hockey, there's balls like lined up, or lacrosse rather. There's balls lined up on the sideline so you can pick up one up quickly. So the ball, fine, change the rule, NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, change the rule. Ball goes in the stands. Guess what? You get to keep the ball. Congratulations. I mean, is it a big deal to have like 8 or 9 basketballs a game?
Yeah.
I mean, really? Seriously? Do you realize in a baseball game, they play with, on average, about 80 different baseballs in one game?
Yep.
They throw away 80 baseballs a game in Major League Baseball.
One thing on the balls, and I hate in the NFL how if a ball goes into the stands, they make you give it back. I'm like, let the fans keep the football. Who cares?
That's odd, but the reason they do that,
I hate it though.
it's weird. I think they do give the fans something else who gets a ball, like they give them something else because of it. But hey, this is fine. You put 2 ball boys on each side of the basket.
It's
on
like
each basket.
It
So
can be
4
the same
total.
people that like sweep the floor when somebody falls down.
Sure.
It can be the sweepers.
They can multi-purpose. So there's just a ball set up under the basket, and if the ball goes in the stands, the ball person just takes the ball and throws it to the referee. That's it. So you tell the NBA players when the ball goes in the stands, get away. Just get away. Change the rules. This is the easiest fix of all time for this thing that happened here. So you just get rid of it. You just stop it. Ball goes in the stands, instantly ball kid throws the ball to a ref, and play resumes. This is the easiest fix to a relatively minute problem. A problem that only exists because the last guy on the bench thinks he's still on the team.
How many times does a situation like this happen? Because I saw
Never.
people.
Never. The ball goes in the stands, Rachel. People give the ball back. There's actually kind of a funny video going around. The ball goes out of bounds. Chris Paul, this guy gets the ball. He hands it to his wife. Hey, hon, look what I got. And Chris Paul goes and snatches the ball away from him. Okay. Should Chris Paul get fined for that? If you read the NBA statement, they say that Jokic made contact twice, resulting in the fine. Read the NBA statement. He said one time trying to retrieve the ball and the other time getting the fan away from him. So the NBA actually writes down, it was so ridiculous.
It's on DMAC's Twitter. He was fired up about it.
I mean, it was so stupid. Here, if I can find it.
Interesting. I don't know. $25,000
All
I feel like
right.
is absolutely nothing for Jokic too. So
All right. The incident which Jokic received a technical foul occurred with 2:36 remaining in the second quarter. Matt Ishbia came into possession of the game ball when it bounced into his hands following a play near his seat. Jokic made contact with Ishbia in an attempt to take the game ball away, and immediately after, when the ball flew further back into the crowd. Twice. They're citing 2 instances of contact. I mean, this is ridiculous, NBA. If you really care about the safety of the athletes, you will immediately make a change to ball kids, and the ball goes out of bounds. You can keep the stupid ball, or maybe they get it back later, and the ball kids give the ball to the ref. The end. The end.
So then if we're talking about safety of the players, do you have to agree with Jake that you should indeed not have people sitting courtside?
No, I like the courtside stuff.
But this whole situation would never have happened if people weren't sitting courtside.
Yeah, but I'm all right with the courtside stuff. If you want to say it endangers the player's safety because they are too close, I would understand that too. I don't know. I'd have to see a little bit of a research study about. I mean, you can YouTube videos of players jumping in the crowd, left and right, and I mean, obviously that didn't happen really during the during COVID, right, in the bubble, because there were no fans there.
True.
That's a really good question. It's the only sport too where the fans are that close. It's that intimate, and the fans have been getting closer and closer. They have figured out that there really didn't used to be.
You could stick your leg out and trip a ref.
Easily.
Easily.
I think what they're doing too is putting the fans closer and closer, because why have 2 rows when you can have 3 rows? 3 rows when you can have 4 rows?
It's all about the money.
I mean, what are those dollars worth? I just find it funny that a guy who's used to being a bench warmer who owns the team puts himself in a seat that, bench warmers would sit in. So I guess he's just comfortable looking at the game from a crappy angle.
All right. Well, J-Mac and I both said yesterday it would be interesting to see Peyton Watson come in the game because we think he could be a key player for this series. Well, Paul George had some great words to say about the rookie. Take a listen.
Another sleeper for you. I had a chance to play against this kid this summer. I'm working out against him, and I didn't know who he was, but he's competing and he's talking. He's trash talking, and he's backing it up. Like he's showing well in the gym. And come to find out, it's Peyton Watson.
What position?
20-year-old. He's small forward, young cat, but he's gonna be good.
What you compare him to?
He's kind of got like a Brandon Ingram game, like long wing. He's got that like slow pace game. He's long, he's tall, he can shoot over you, can handle it, 3-point shot. I think he's gonna be a stud, but he's got to wait his time. He's going to be really good when he gets his opportunity. Just remember that name.
Peyton Watson. Y'all heard the name. Don't sleep on it. You just been rated PG, baby.
You've just been rated PG, baby. All right. Kellan Olson joins us. Thank you so much from Arizona Sports, our sister station. Kellan, how are you?
I'm great. Glad to be here.
Well, we appreciate it. Real quick, because I know everybody's wondering about Gabriel Landeskog and retirement. He says, I have not contemplated retirement at all, to be honest with you. It's about identifying a problem and figuring out a solution. Until I've exhausted every option, I'm going to keep pushing forward. So everybody worried about Gabriel Landeskog and retirement. He's going to see everything he can possibly do. But Kellan, we have a huge game tonight. Obviously, you had a bunch of fun while back home in Phoenix, I'm sure, over the weekend. Walk us through, because obviously D-Mac says Matt Ishbia, he's a man with the problem in this situation. You were there. You got to watch the whole situation go down. From your point of view, walk us through it.
I think it was one of those bang-bang situations. I know D-Mac is going to love me hearing this and play both sides.
Keep going.
Instead of take a
Keep
side.
going.
I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue. Give me a second. The ball goes out of bounds. The ball lands in Ishbia's hands. Jokic is trying to sort out exactly what's happening. He's trying to get the ball. Josh Okogie is 5 feet over there on the ground. So Ishbia's got the ball. He's looking over here. He's making sure Okogie's good. All of a sudden, large 7-foot man grabbing the ball from him. Now, should he have just given up the ball? Yes. Why didn't he? I don't know. I don't know why he did that. Second of all, when the ball's let go, it's just kind of one of those situations where, the ball's in the air. And then Jokic's like, get out of here, man. Just gives him a little chicken wing, a little bit of that. Maybe not a full elbow, perhaps, but like the elbow area, the forearm, perhaps, gets in there, brushes him aside. What does Matt Ishbia do? Takes the charge, flops excellently. Was it not a terrific flop?
Well, it's somebody who, imagines being in a game. So somebody who pretends that he's in a game would have plenty of time to actually, practice that, I guess, in his head about how to do it. So yeah, it was a wonderful flop. It was such a wonderful flop. Everybody's calling it a flop. Actually, I guess it was a terrible flop if it's so
calling it a flop.
There's an art to it for sure. I just think I didn't want to see anyone get suspended or fined at all. I think that the fine was.
I did. I wanted to see Ishbia get in trouble. I wanted to see him get fined.
I feel like that never happens though.
I think
How many times in the history?
Any other fan, he would be banned from the arena. He certainly wouldn't be in those seats. And as an owner, he does have more responsibility to comport himself in a correct manner. He absolutely, positively should be fined.
Can I ask you guys something?
Sure.
If he's here tonight, does he get booed every time he walks anywhere?
How
was the reception here?
People don't know who he is.
Okay, because he was in such this moment where it feels like everyone does now know who he is if they didn't already.
I think it would have to be pointed out. That is a good question, though. I am curious. Maybe you would have the answer. Was he here at game 1 and 2?
I believe he was, yeah.
Where?
I believe he was on the court, as he usually is.
Really?
I believe so, yeah.
I'll have to go back through some of my videos, maybe.
I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, he might have been. But he's typically, those are his seats. So as soon as Okogie went over there, we're like, wow, that's towards Ishbia. And then all of a sudden, we couldn't tell from our angle, so we're on the opposite side of the floor, so all we see is big, large man going to get ball. And then all of a sudden, we see the video and we're like, oh my goodness, this is going to become a thing, a controversy, if you will, which is why we're talking about it now instead of a huge game 5 tonight.
That's fair.
Yeah.
To answer your question, though, I think if Jokic would have got suspended, he would have heard every single person at Ball Arena tonight. Because he didn't, I think people are just moving on from the situation.
I
It
do
is
think
what it is.
I do think the temperature tonight will be unlike anything we've ever seen because of all this. Yeah.
This is going to feel like a Game 7 tonight because, especially for the Nuggets.
Listen, they already love Jokic here in Denver. The appreciation and love for Jokic is going to be, I mean, it's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be off the charts. I think the energy in the building will certainly favor the Nuggets. I mean, I'll tell you this. This is a game the Nuggets should win. And if I was the Suns, I wouldn't even be bothered by it, to be honest with you, because they know they get to go home and they get to just figure things out and settle things down a little bit. The Suns have a really unique opportunity tonight. I mean, they win this game tonight. They're going to win the series. And they will do something that is
Did you
just,
say the Suns are going to win?
if they win tonight,
Oh, okay.
I don't think
I was
that-
like, you're just automatically giving it to him?
no, I'm not. I guess I'll take the Nuggets tonight, but it's got to come with some adjustments from Malone because I'll give the Suns plenty of credit on the basketball court. The adjustments they made and outscoring the bench of the Nuggets 40-11 absolutely positively made the difference. The Nuggets can allow for Booker and for Durant to have big nights, okay? They can. That's actually all right. Giving up 19 to Shamet is, I mean, you cannot survive that.
Yeah, and you need more from Aaron Gordon. You need more from Michael Porter Jr. You need more from Kentavious Caldwell-Pope because I think the stories of Game 1 and Game 2 were those guys. Aaron Gordon Game 1, and in Game 2, you guys were both in the building, I assume. Like, the crowd for 2 quarters was waiting to explode. In the second quarter, third quarter, we kept waiting for that moment. KCP hits those 2 threes at the fourth, crowd explodes. Game is pretty much not over from there, but we know how those kinds of games go early in the fourth quarter. To your point on how the crowd will be tonight, it's interesting because the Suns have found themselves in a couple of different situations like this. 2 years ago, for example, they were here when Jokic got his MVP trophy. That was a wild night. I was here for that. That was special to be a part of. There was the FJ Crowder game a year ago. I don't know if you guys remember that. There were fans that actually had FJ Crowder shirts on, and it was a special night. Jay hit his first 3, of course, as he typically would, but it was kind of one of those situations where the crowd was amped up because of what had developed over the course of the series. And I think that always happens, right? Like later on in the series, the crowd gets more invested. They hate the other guys more. But there's something special here where, to your point, Jokic is their guy. And someone from, if it would have been a random fan, I think it would have been different. But it's someone from the Suns, and they feel like they got to protect their guy, as they should.
I am curious the energy now because obviously it has completely shifted. The fans here in Denver are really nervous about this series. I think both DMAC and I would agree. It's like, we don't know if they can overcome this, right? What's the energy like in Phoenix? Is it now like, oh yeah, this is the Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, what we were expecting to see and they should be able to roll it? Or is there still nerves considering you're going up against Jokic and Jamal Murray?
I think there's still nerves, and
Okay.
I think after the first 2 games, people were writing off the season as it was already.
Yeah.
So it shows how much can happen over the course of a playoff series. I think the most interesting thing right now that we have to try and figure out, and we'll get more of an inclination for tonight, is the Dallas series last year when the Suns lost. The 2 games in Phoenix to start, they smoked Dallas. We're like, this is going to be 4 or 5 again. Like, they're just going to get back in their form. The 64-win juggernaut, here it is, we see it. They go back to Dallas, they just don't look like themselves again. We're like, what's going on? Game 5 in Phoenix, they beat Dallas by 30.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, what's happening here? We go back to Dallas, they get smoked in Dallas again. So now it hasn't been these types of blowouts by any means necessarily, but we've seen how Denver plays in Denver. We've seen how Phoenix plays in Phoenix. Are we going to start to see something like change, or is that correlation just going to continue?
And
Well, I'll
Devin
say this-
Booker said real quick just
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
Post game, the series doesn't start until somebody wins on the road.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, if Devin Booker has an off night, can he ever have an off night? Will he please have an off night?
I'm waiting to see it.
It hasn't happened yet. Jamal Murray's had an off night, maybe more than one, so has Michael Porter Jr. Nikola Jokic has not had an off night. He hasn't. I was on in Phoenix on our wonderful sister station, and they asked me, well, what do you do against Jokic? How do you stop him? And I go, well, you can't. And he literally, he doesn't have any weaknesses. But neither really does Devin Booker. Kevin Durant does a little bit. He's just not quite as consistent. Jokic is literally unguardable. If Jokic puts up 30 shots and he'll score 40 points, the end. Booker, what's incredible is he's doing it with 18 shots, with 24 shots. I mean, it's just like the efficiency is.
He heard the talk about him and he said, no, that's not correct.
Well, I just don't know how anybody, and maybe you actually know better than I on this, has he been this efficient the entire playoffs? Or is he more like, this is crazy because he's at 80%? He's really more like 60, 63%.
Well, he should be around like 50 would be fantastic, by the way. He's
course,
at
of
64
course,
right
of
now,
course.
which is just unheard of. To your point, and something that you were talking about there and why I think basketball is the greatest sport on the planet, Nikola Jokic and Devin Booker could not be two of the more different players, right? Like
Yeah.
Jokic is one of the most unique players in the world. But what we're watching right now is both teams kind of deal with the same kind of thing, because what the Suns are doing is allowing Nikola Jokic to beat them, because what they don't want to do is allow the Suns to do what they did in Game 4, which was Devin Booker and Kevin Durant get double-teamed, sham it, bang, Ross, bang. They don't want to get the other guys going. That's not what the Suns want to allow Denver to do. Jokic is the best playmaker in the world. Like Luka, LeBron, whatever, it's Jokic, hands down. But Devin Booker has taken huge steps in the last 3 to 5 years, hands down, in that department. And I think that we're starting to see that evolution of not only him, but him and Durant at the same time. So they have two different guys who draw double teams all the time. Denver threw those double teams at those guys all the time. They still combined for 72 points somehow. I don't really know how that happened, because Devin Booker's just shooting over double teams. When there's 20 seconds left and you have two bodies coming at you, you're supposed to freak out. And he was just like, no, I'm just going to rise up over it and then look at the crowd and make the crowd go nuts. So to my point, will the Suns force Jokic to become more of a playmaker? They should not, and I don't expect them to. So the challenge for Denver becomes, how do we get those guys going? Can they run more offense for Michael Porter Jr.? Do they run more offense for Michael Porter Jr.? I don't know. I think Jamal has been outstanding in the series, to be clear, but it's a lot of dribbling. It's a lot of dribbling to get his shots. He's working really hard for his shots, but it's also just slowing down their offense. I think the Suns are getting what they want in that regard.
Oh, I would 100% agree with that. I think Jamal has definitely slowed down the game, and I think that you just need to see a fast-paced offense for the Nuggets for them to be able to beat the Suns.
You know, Michael Malone, the Nuggets coach, did point out that the Nuggets were 1 of 9 on wide open three-pointers too. And in general, during the season, they've been so much better on that. So I think you get a little home cooking there. And if you're having 9 wide open threes, and this is what made the Nuggets dangerous during the regular season, because teams had to collapse to Jamal or Jokic or even Michael Porter Jr. So it let guys like Jeff Green and Aaron Gordon and Vlatko Čančar and Zeke Naji. I mean, I'm telling you, Kellan, they were wide open.
Yeah.
Wide open. Vlatko at one point after like a big game said, well, I'm the worst player on the floor. And he wasn't lying. But because he's the worst player on the floor, he is wide open. So these are usually very easy, makeable NBA shots. So I think that does happen tonight for the Nuggets. I do think at home they will get wide open looks and they'll just make more of those shots. And likely it'll come from KCP, okay, who's been a good wide open three-point shooter most of the year. If KCP hits 3 3-pointers, it's at least a tie game. If he hits 4 3-pointers, the Nuggets probably win. If Shamit has 5 3-pointers again, well, then Phoenix probably wins. It goes like that. You've got to get contributions from other people, and we're just assuming the great players will play great.
And to provide local perspective here, who is the guy either on like the Nuggets, the Rockets, the Avalanche, who the fan base not despises, but they're frustrated that they're playing and they hate when they don't play well? Like, is there a specific guy on any of the teams?
Well, we used to have Will Barton on the Nuggets, but they got rid of
He
it.
drove you crazy.
They got,
He drove you
well,
crazy.
there's nobody that drives you crazy on the Nuggets right now. Will Barton was that guy,
Okay.
though. We had that guy.
So Landry, it's less so more of like his performance and just more so Monty Williams' consistent faith in him. And that was the case
That was
over
Will
the
Barton
course
last year.
of the entire season. He kept playing when he was healthy. He comes back, he starts playing in the Clippers series, and it just didn't really make sense as to why. And then Monty's faith pays off in a huge Game 4. That was the best game Landry Shamet played in his son's career by a mile. Like, yes, he's had games with 7 threes or 6 threes randomly every 6 weeks or whatever, but the impact, like the context of it wasn't even close.
Well, if they go that way again, first of all, I mean, if he can keep hitting the three-pointers, okay, fine. But
Good for you.
defensively, he is terrible. And he is a liability defensively, and Jamal Murray will eat him up if they really continue with that matchup.
Jamal's got to work, though. Like, if you watch Jamal, at the end of Game 3 at multiple points, he was exhausted. I thought that he looked tired in Game 4 as well. And if you watch Landry tonight, I know that Jamal is cooking. And when Jamal sees him, like the cartoon thing pops up and the steak is there. That's what he's thinking of. But watch how hard Jamal has to work and watch how much Landry is on him throughout the game. That's all Landry's out there for. He's not out there to stop Jamal Murray or contain Jamal Murray. He's there to get him tired, and it's worked 2 games in a row.
Well, though, I'll give you 2 players to keep an eye out for that haven't played in this series, haven't even played in the playoffs, is Reggie Jackson.
Oh, no, Suns fans just got scared. So
Excuse
2
me.
years ago, 2021 Western Conference Finals, he averaged, I think, 19 or 20 a game in that series.
Okay.
He was phenomenal. They are scared to see him tonight.
And,
They don't
and
want
the,
him.
the other one is Peyton Watson. And
Right.
Peyton Watson, if you didn't know, is a really interesting story with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is a mentor to Peyton Watson, has been since high school. They work out together. They're actually very, very close. And Peyton Watson is very long, 6'8", but he has a 7'1" wingspan. And I think he may just be put out to bother guys for a few minutes. If they make 2 adjustments, I think they do give Jamal a little bit of a break. They put the ball in Reggie Jackson's hands a little bit more. He's a good three-point shooter, or at least had been. And I think Peyton Watson is just a pest, an energy pest that makes more sense. And probably they go smaller and take out Jeff Green. I could see the Nuggets doing that to shake things up a little bit.
You mentioned Jeff Green, though. That was going to be my answer to your question. Like, if we had to pick one player right now, I feel like fans are getting frustrated with why Jeff Green is out there as much as he is, especially in this playoff run, because they're just like,
Yeah, but they don't hate Jeff Green.
no, they
though.
don't hate him, but it's just like, why is he still out there? Like, you see those tweets that go through your timeline every single game
As
of like,
soon as
take him out.
The way I can like picture it is the first time they mess up, your entire timeline on Twitter is like, why is he out there? Why is he out there?
Jeff
What is he
Green
doing
there?
out there?
No, I would
That's what I do
100%
for
agree
them,
with
yeah.
you. I would love to see Peyton Watson get out there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good possibility. And we're not talking a ton of time. I mean, we're talking maybe, you know, 6 to 8 minutes, something like that.
Well, I think both of them have the talent to do it. Like Peyton is a guy who, like, you see the talent, the intangibles, and all that kind of stuff that he has as a young player. Like, if he were to make an All-Star team in 5 years, it wouldn't surprise anyone just because of the raw athletic package that he's dealing with. And then Reggie Jackson was one of the better point guards in the league a couple years ago, and like I said, had a huge impact in a Western Conference Finals 2 years ago. So those are 2 guys for sure that I think could make an impact tonight, and we'll see, because Monty, that's what Monty has done better than Malone to this point. He's gone through his rotation, he's looked for different answers, and he found the correct answer. Like, he took,
And Malone can be stubborn.
yeah.
Well, he has been stubborn now. And now Michael Malone, listen, I haven't been on the fire Michael Malone bandwagon. I'm not.
There's a bandwagon for that?
Well, like,
to be clear, there's a bandwagon in Phoenix to fire Monty Williams too, so it's like it's a thing that happens with every coach everywhere, I guess. But
You got good players, and if they don't win, people are like, fire him.
the problem is, I think it'd be okay if you lost to a great Suns team if the Suns were playing great. But the fact that you were up 2-0
Oh my
on this
gosh.
team, and you haven't made any adjustments. Again, if they had made adjustments, if things just didn't go their way, whatever, fine. You know, nobody's really going to blame you if your superstar players, you know, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. just aren't, if they just don't play well, then, I mean, that's on the players more than the coach. But it is about adjustments as long as everybody's playing well. I'll tell you this. Devin Booker has an off night.
oh, I'm not knocking. For
Yeah,
that.
that's-
You
appreciate
are.
it.
I was unifying
take
together
that.
with the knock and like the
Appreciate
team.
it. No, you just knocked for
No, I
off
didn't.
night.
No, I did not.
Appreciate it.
No, I did not.
And an off night for him might be, I mean, what would an off night be? Like
24.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
gosh.
24.
Yeah, like 9 for 24.
Yes.
Guys.
For 24 points. I mean,
Yeah.
something like that. If that's
5 assists, 5 turnovers.
that would be an off night.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this: if that happens, the Suns lose by 20. You know, that's the difference that will make. Because think about the rebounds, and the thing that the Nuggets did so well against the Suns in the first couple of games was rebound. They just well, at least in game 1, and they did get them in game 2, even though it was close, 41-39. But in game 1, the reason why is they dominated in rebounds. Durant and Booker were just okay comparatively, right? And 0 contributions from the bench. I mean, it is actually remarkable. The Suns got 4 points from the bench, 4 in game 2, and got 40 in game 4. I mean, that is staggering. That is unbelievable.
Yeah, so what we haven't learned yet this postseason, to your point on how good has Devin Booker been this entire postseason, we don't know what it looks like yet for the Suns team and how they play when he's fine.
Yeah.
He's okay.
Right.
He's been unbelievable pretty much every single game so far. And the thing about Devin and the conversation that people are having about him, like I've covered him his whole career so far, and this has been brewing for him for a couple of years. But even look back 2 years ago, the moments that he had during their finals run, the back-to-back 40 burgers in the finals, the way that he closed out the Lakers in his first playoff series, he scored 47 in that game in Game 6, like against
The
LeBron.
moment doesn't seem to ever be too big for him.
No, so I wanted to preface that and say, like, I never expect him to like stop or play poorly, but what does this team look like when they do? To your point, you think it's going to be a blowout. I don't know if I'd go that far necessarily because he can impact the game in other ways besides scoring. But then your counter would be a valid one, which would be who else is going to score? I don't know. It would have to be Kevin Durant going nuts, but that's the great thing about this team.
Here's
is
the
that
tricky
they've
thing.
got 2 of them.
Here's the tricky thing. What do you do with Chris Paul once he's healthy in Game 6?
This has been the conversation that's been going on.
That's the tricky question. What do you do when he's healthy in Game 6?
Yeah, so I wrote a piece on ArizonaSports.com yesterday that went over how the Suns have they're hitting a title level form in a couple of different areas. And the way we saw in Game 4, something I brought up earlier, which is just the level of ball movement that they were playing with. And a lot of that had to do with how quickly they were playing. If you just went through their field goal makes on NBA.com, it was just every time it felt like it was someone running the ball up off a miss or a make. And we saw that a ton in Game 4. Chris Paul likes to play at his own pace. He likes to slow down. Now, he wants to speed it up sometimes, to be clear, but Cam Payne is in there. And as you guys have seen, he's nonstop energy. They call that man Turbo for a reason. He's just gliding up and down the floor. So if Chris comes back, and I think the bigger question is, if the Suns lose a game in this series, that's when it starts to become a little bit more obvious, because I think the flaws will start to reveal themselves. To be clear, I think they need Chris Paul in this series, let alone to win a title. So they should not look into, I think people are looking at, it's tied 3-3 in Game 7. Does he just come off the bench? Chris Paul has not come off the bench once in his entire career, ever. Not once. So I don't see that happening necessarily, but if Cam Payne is particularly playing well, that's the thing that I think is another optimistic viewpoint for the Suns. They got 12 total points out of DeAndre Ayton in Games 3 and 4, and they got 12 total points out of Cam Payne in Games 3 and 4. Cam has averaged around 14 to 15 a game as a starter. DeAndre over the course of his career is around that kind of number. They're looking for more scoring from those guys, but that is the thing in the back of the head. It's okay, if they drop Game 5, we're expecting to see him in Game 6 probably, even if he's at 70% or whatever. But if they win that game, if they win the next game and they move on to the next round, what do they do with Chris Paul? They look awfully good without Chris Paul. It's kind of a conversation that's going on. He's got a partially guaranteed contract next year that people have been talking about for years already. Lot of stuff going on. I don't expect it to affect the team necessarily, but the dialogue that we're having, it's interesting.
All right, well, both of us, or all three of us, I guess I should say, we of course want our teams to move on, and the Warriors-Lakers series has been something interesting, and I don't know if I want to use the word unexpected, but I just didn't anticipate the games to look like this. I don't know if anyone else did. I see you shaking your head.
Well, I'm not surprised that the Warriors suck on the road. I mean, they had the most dysfunctional season ever, starting with punching each other, and then really seriously look at the home and road splits. I mean, something is wrong with this team in terms of who they are as a team. There's just something that's not
And Jake
there.
Shapiro has said the chemistry in the locker room is really bad for the Warriors. It is divided. I just wasn't expecting this. And it's fun to watch as a fan. It's been a dogfight every single night that you go and watch any of these games. Who would you like to see move on from this now that the Lakers have the 3-1?
I'd like to see the Warriors, because I think they're dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And theoretically, if the Nuggets could get past this round and have they'd have a home court advantage against anybody. But I would rather face the Warriors. So go Warriors. I don't know how they make the comeback at this point, but I think they're the worst team. And hey, listen, I got to give props to the Lakers. They were terrible at the beginning of the year. They looked like the worst shooting NBA team I'd ever seen. And they just got their act together in a major way. And what LeBron James has done, man, I mean, we could have any conversation you have about LeBron just starts and ends with the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he is, but that's the only conversation that he deserves to be in. He's that good. So he is amongst the top 5 of all time, and maybe seriously, if he wins an NBA championship this year, I mean, that would be staggering. To think where that would put him in the pantheon of all-time greats.
Would that be the end of LeBron James? Would he go out on top?
No,
You
no.
think he's
Why
gonna
would
continue?
he?
He wants to play with his kids.
He's got Bronny.
True,
Bronny's got
true.
one glory year at USC.
True.
It's the most fascinating random NBA subplot in the last 10 years is that draft coming up. Is the team going to draft Bronny James just because they think they're going to get LeBron James too? I have no idea.
It's like the Broncos hiring Nathaniel Hackett, thinking they're going to get Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. Anyways, Kellan, who you want? Lakers or Warriors?
I think the better matchup for the Suns would be the Lakers. It's interesting because it's pedigree versus pedigree. I was about to say championship pedigree, but it's Anthony Davis who won one in the bubble, and then LeBron James. It's LeBron James. But I think the Warriors have that pedigree. But to your point on the game we were watching, it was so interesting because Lonnie Walker, who I'm a fan of, but he's taking over in the fourth quarter against the Warriors, and I'm just watching Steph Curry and Klay Thompson not be able to combat Lonnie Walker, and I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
To your point, D-Mac, dysfunction.
They're a mess. They are just officially a mess. But you can't ever write them off because the talent is so just unbelievable. In all honesty, you got to play somebody great at that point, no matter what.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's an advantage one way or the other. I did think before the series started, I did say, for the record, I thought this was going to be the hardest matchup the Nuggets would have, period, including the NBA final. That's how difficult I thought it was going to be. We all changed our tune after game 2. we all wrote it off like, wow, what were we even thinking? Back to that. I originally picked the Nuggets in 7 games. I think I'm just going to stick with that.
I think you have to.
Yeah, so I'll just stick with my original prediction. I think the Lakers or the Warriors, frankly, I think for either the Suns or the Nuggets would be an easier matchup than what they're going through right now. I think they're better matchups and easier matchups. That being said, hey man, it's tough sledding right now.
We're seeing the 2 best teams in the West right now, for sure.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Who you got tonight?
To his point, I'm just going to stick with my prediction. I had Suns in 6 coming into the series. I shouldn't take out of that now. Oh, she makes the surprise face. Whoa, interesting.
I'm just like, oh man.
Yikes.
I tell you this, if they swept the Nuggets, I think that's going to be big trouble for Michael Malone. Huge trouble.
He'll be fired. He will be gone.
Wow.
That's going to be hard to survive. That's going to be hard to explain.
There's no explanation. It's goodbye.
It's an interesting line in the sand moment when you have a guy who we all know Michael Malone is a good coach, but at a certain point you need results, and I'm sure this is the year for
It would be
Yeah,
another
go ahead,
wasted Jokic year.
I'll give you some history too. So George Karl was the Nuggets coach
George Karl.
for
Go
years and
ahead.
years and years.
Yeah.
He only got him past the first round one time. They did make it to the Western Conference Final. He lost in 6 to the Lakers. He got him. He won the NBA Coach of the Year, and he got fired.
Yep.
The reason the same year. The reason he got fired is he just couldn't figure out after 9 years how to go beyond the first round of the playoffs. He couldn't figure it out except for that one time. And sometimes you just, and I love George. I love Coach Karl. We're personal friends and everything's great. But it was just like, wow, I guess we got to make a change here because it's just not working for whatever reason. And you still have an unbelievable amount of talent with the Nuggets that will all be back. Jamal will be back. Porter Jr. will be back. Jokic will be back. They're all going to be back. KCP's going to be back. Aaron Gordon. How about that? The Nuggets are so solid in their starting 5. They're all going to be back. The biggest loss is going to be Bruce Brown. We're going to lose Bruce Brown. You guys, if there's any way the Suns could pick up Bruce Brown, holy cow, that would be unbelievable. But I think the Nuggets would be in a position where can you trust them with this core, with what's going on now, with this coach to get it done? And if he can't get it done with this core after all this time in this situation of 2-0, then maybe it is time for a change. And I don't root for that because I really, really like Michael Malone. I don't root for that. But he's got to make some sort of adjustments.
It would be another wasted Jokic year, and I don't think
it would be the most painful Jokic
Yes.
wasted year. In all fairness to the Suns, you got to figure a way to win an NBA championship without Chris Paul at some point.
You got to win one.
Okay.
They haven't won one.
But
51 years.
The Nuggets haven't even been to a finals. They've never even been there.
How are the Broncos doing?
We're not doing good.
Okay,
Didn't the Avs
Kellan,
just win
okay.
one? Didn't they have another dynasty before that?
Wow. We want to compare hockey teams now?
I want to compare Valley Sports versus Denver Sports. You kidding me with the championship thing? Don't pull the championship card. Come on.
Oh, he's
Don't do
gotcha. Kellan, we definitely appreciate it. We are going to have you stick around, though, and you get to see our live reaction because apparently there's some interesting updates out of the Avalanche press conference that's been going on.
Good stuff?
Yeah, okay. So
Okay.
first we got Landeskog. I'm confident. I think it's optimism and confidence that you need to have. I know it's not going to be perfect off the get-go, and it's a long time from a game, but I'm confident in the player I am. I'm confident I'll get back on the ice and make a big impact. He also said it's too early to tell, but I'm definitely leaving that door open if that's how we want to put it for the playoffs next year. Now, I know there is, Avs GM Chris McFarland on Landeskog missing 2023-2024. In terms of replacing him, it's really hard to replace your captain. I guess knowing that he's out, it potentially opens up avenues that weren't available to us last season. And then Frankie had surgery. Lehkonen broke a toe. Manson had a procedure done last week. McFarland mentions Cogs and Helms as well. Avalanche were really beat up. And then on Valery Nichushkin, 17 days after he left the team and missed 5 playoff games, it'll just be consistent with what the messaging has been. We can't comment on Val's situation at this time.
Okay.
Lots of interesting notes there for sure, and a ton we'll get into over at denversports.com. And of course, you can listen to DMAC on the drive for all of his full thoughts on that. Kellan, I appreciate you hopping on with us today. And of course, tonight's game is going to be a big one. Game 5 will be down tomorrow to break it all down. We'll be back tomorrow to break it all down, if I could talk at all. 10:30 a.m. We'll see you guys then. Bye, everybody.